What's up, guys? This is Dominic D'Angelo of adfreeshows.com, scoops.com, one of a kind with RVD, and I am here today. Straight talk with the boss, Magnum TA and Greg Gagne. Magnum, Greg, and myself are so happy to be a part of the Four Horsemen Network with Arn Anderson. We figured what a great way to kind of show what we're all about here is by showcasing some of those previous wrestling stars that we covered on some episodes and get you guys to know what we talk about a lot on here and figure what 3 stars to kind of showcase here this week. But Verne Gagne, Ric Flair, and Dusty Rhodes. So 3 names that Magnum and Greg both have a relationship with and have had a relationship with. So yes, enjoy this episode. We want to really highlight those names of the past that have paved the way for pro wrestling. Obviously, these are some major names, but we're also going to cover a lot of names from the early days that maybe don't get as much recognition and stuff like that. So if you guys have any suggestions of certain stars that you'd like Magnum and Greg to talk about, drop a comment below. Let us know. Hit the like, subscribe button on the Four Horsemen Network and speak your mind. But we also really do a strong job here at trying to promote the Powertown Wrestling figure line that Magnum and Greg have started. Man, if you haven't seen these figures, you got to go check them out. Go to powertownwrestling.com. There's the Ultra Series line that's you can see there, but those have been out for a while. But something that's coming up here that you're available to pre-order now are the new Remco figures. And wow, do they look great. They hit that nostalgia note for pro wrestling fans. And there's several figures. You can get them each for $24.99. But there's also those 2 packs. One that features the Rock and Roll Express, and the other one that features Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard in that notorious I Quit match. Those are $48.99. But you can get the whole set bundle for $220.99, and that comes with a customized poster by another great artist and Hal Haney, who I just saw again this weekend here at WrestleMania. So yes, go to powertownwrestling.com, get those pre-orders in because this is the only line that they're going to have of these kind of figures. So, and at the cheapest price that they're going to be available at. So yes, go to powertownwrestling.com or scan that QR code that's down below here that you see, boom, right there. And yeah, hit it up, guys. This will be a really fun episode and kind of get you introduced to the show and what we talk about. We do cover a lot. We do cover modern wrestling as well. So Magnum follows the product, so does Greg, and so we talk about that. But the big aspect is covering the days of yesteryear too. So enjoy this episode of Verne Gagne, Ric Flair, and Dusty Rhodes, baby. All right, see you guys on the other side. That'll lead us into our spotlight this week, I think. And funny enough, Greg, you know this person. It's your dad.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Verne Gagne.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, remember that guy? Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to get just your insight here, just his early beginning, so to speak. Like, how did he get, like, he's known to be a 3-sport athlete and things like that. But, like, how did the early beginnings of him getting into the pro wrestling business, because there's
He always was. He used to watch wrestling or go down to the matches or listen to it on the radio with his grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And he always wanted to be a wrestler. And he finally wrestled in high school. He was a state champion for 4 years. He went on to the University of Minnesota. He was the NCAA champion 3 years, Big Ten champion 4 years in a row. And then he wrestled in the 1948. He was an alternate on the Olympic wrestling team. He wrestled Dick Hutton to see who would get the spot in the Olympics. And Verne was always a freestyle wrestler. And if you contain your opponent for a number of minutes, you got points for riding time. So he rode this Dick Hutton the whole time, but it was Greco-Roman, so they didn't make anything, and they awarded the match to Hutton because he had more Greco-Roman moves than Verne did. And that's why he didn't get on. He got on the Olympic team as an alternate. And then when he came back, he got his start in Minneapolis, and he wrestled a guy named Abe King Kong Cashy. And he played football at Minnesota. He was an All-American football and some of his other guys that were important in the state of Minnesota, Billy By, Jim Alaski, Harvey Solon. And those four came down to watch him wrestle. And he wrestled this Abe King Kong Cashy. And Cashy had him up to the ropes and he was choking him. And the four of them jumped up and Cashy leaned over and he said, "Hey, punks, sit down." And they all sat down and they were quiet the rest of the match. So Verne got done in the match. He wrestled about 18 minutes. He won by disqualification. And they told him that he was too small. So they sent him to Tulsa, Oklahoma. He bought a trailer. And my mom and I was 2 or 3 years old at the time, got in this trailer and drove down to Tulsa, Oklahoma. First week there, he wins the light heavyweight championship. And it's amazing I'm 75 now, but I still remember he would come home and where the trailer was parked, there was a drive-in theater across the way. And we could see it, but we couldn't hear it. Mm-hmm. And when he'd come home, I'd get up, he'd put me on his shoulders and we'd watch a little bit of the movie. Couldn't hear it, but I could see it. But I can still remember that in my mind. And I can remember driving down the road with him and he would always sing songs and we'd have to sing together. But then he got a call back to Minneapolis. And when he came back there, everything worked out for him. And from there, we moved back there and the rest is history.
Well, who did he learn from down in Oklahoma and stuff like that? Who did he train with?
Well, he trained with a guy named Joe Pazendak in Minneapolis. Joe broke him in. And then after that, he just basically learned on his own. I mean, he had, instructions from some of the older guys would help him after his match, tell him what he did or what you didn't do. But most of it he learned on his own. And, when he came back and he started on the DuPont network, it ran from 50 to 57. And, he was on there every week and he became their big star. Mm-hmm. He was the U.S. champion, and then Lou Thez was the NWA champion, and Lou would come in, just once in a while, but Verne was there every week. So Verne was actually the first athlete in 1950, besides Babe Ruth, that made over $100,000. So, I mean, he was that popular nationwide. So finally, he bought into the Minneapolis territory. That's where he wanted to come back. When the network closed down in 1957, he came back, bought in, and he knew what TV meant for professional wrestling. So that was what he did. He went and got all those TV stations we were on. I mean, we were on from Minneapolis down to St. Louis, all the way to the West Coast, and then across Canada. We were in Winnipeg, and they would tape those matches and put us eventually on TSN across Canada. So, I mean, when they talked about territories, we covered more territory than anybody else in the country. McMahon had the big cities in the East Coast. Charlotte was on fire. Florida was on fire, but they had their areas. But as far as what we had to do in traveling wise, we were all over the place, and we had fabulous ratings, unbelievable. We had a 22 rating or 24 rating in Minneapolis, and with all our television's network, we averaged over a 20, and we had a 64% share of the audience. The only TV that beat us was 60 Minutes. They had the same rating at 24, but they had a 65 share. We had a 64 share.
Jeez.
So
yeah, you mentioned that last week.
Yeah, we were on fire, and he created that whole thing. And he wanted to develop talent, and he brought all the talent. He would send them out and bring them back when they got, ready to come into the AWA. But he trained 144 wrestlers. Jeez. I'll give you some of the names. Flair.
That's what I was going to ask next.
Lars Anderson, Jack Lanza, and Blackjack Mulligan.
Start over, Greg. You dropped out real quick. Start over. Ric Flair.
Did I? Start over? Okay. I don't know why I started with Rick. He was in our class, but Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, Gene Oldie and Lars Anderson, Larry and Kurt Hennig, Blackjack Lanza, Blackjack Mulligan, Bulldog Bob Brown, Gilles the Fish Poisson also wrestled as Alex the Butcher and Louis Cree, Bob Bruggers, Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, Jimmy Valiant, the Valiant Brothers, Dale Hay, who was Buddy Smith or Buddy Roberts.
Yeah.
Baron von Raschke, Dick Ackles, the Bruiser, Dick the Bruiser, Paul Ellering, Ken Patera, the Iron Sheik, Bob Remus, Sergeant Slaughter, Buck Zumhoff, Scott, the Irwin Brothers, Dale Lewis, that's the guy in the past and another great amateur wrestler. Let's see, Dennis Stamp, Bob Brower, Chris Taylor, Paul Pershman, Brad Ringens, and of course Nord the Barbarian, and that's only part of them.
Right. Now am I mistaken? Did he help train superstar Billy Graham, and did he help train Jesse Ventura too? Was that, or am I mistaken?
Well, Jesse trained by a guy named Eddie Sharkey, who was a local guy in Minneapolis, and he also had the Road Warriors, guys like that, but Eddie never trained them in the really good fundamentals, and I mean, Jesse couldn't hold his hands up really. And when he came back, he could talk. Jim and I came back, Brunzell came back from Japan and did a week in Hawaii, and we had to wrestle Jesse Ventura, and his partner was another bodybuilder. And oh my God, to have a match with those two was very tough. But Jesse could talk, and Jesse was from Minnesota. He wanted to come home, and I told my dad, I said, he can talk, but Jesus, he's horrible in the ring. So Adrian Adonis had just come in, and Adrian was a heck of a hand. Yeah. Adrian was unbelievable. So teamed those two up as the East-West connection, and they were very successful. And we had some great matches with them. Worked around Jesse, and even though if you talk to Jesse, he was the guy. We couldn't have done it without him. But he couldn't make anybody look too good in the ring. We made him look good, but vice versa, it didn't work out too well.
Didn't help out so much.
Yeah. He didn't know how to take a bump too well or anything. He didn't like taking them. It was just, it was a different era then. And, Verne had that background of amateur wrestling, and he trained everybody. Our camp was 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And maybe I've told the story. If I haven't, cut me off. But in an old barn with a light bulb above it, no windows in it. We were on the second floor. We had Ric Flair, honest to God, he quit twice.
That's what I heard, yes.
We had him convinced that you had to dive out this window on the second floor and land in the horse crap down below. And he quit twice because we never told Verne. But Verne came to camp one day and it was getting the winter time, and it was freezing down there. And God, how are we going to hit that hard? Jesus, that down there, that hard dirt and that crap. And he's all sweating about it. So he was living next door. It was Bob Bruggers and Patera and myself on one side, and him and his wife in a duplex. And Verne came to the camp. He says, "Where's Rick?" And I said, "Well, he quit." He said, "What do you mean he quit?" I said, "He quit." Well, he had Billy Robbins. Billy, you run the guys through. I'm going to go get Flair. And so he goes back and knocks on the door, and his wife Leslie answers. He says, Verne says, "Where's Rick?" "Well, Verne, he quit." He said, "Tell him to come out here." So Rick came out, and he said, "What are you doing?" "Well, I don't think I can make it, Verne. I got to quit." And Verne open-handed him and knocked him right on his ass. He said, "Get up and get in my car. We're going out to the camp." That happened twice to Rick. 2 different times. But, he hung it out, and I don't remember what happened to him. I don't know if he made it.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like it's not a name I recall, to be honest.
Oh, he's still around. No, he did quite well for himself.
Did pretty good.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, Magnum. What?
We'd have loved to have Magnum in the AWA.
I could imagine. That's kind of where
with his amateur background and that, Verne would have taken him, and the rest has been pushed aside.
Meg, what was the scuttlebutt you heard about, like work people trained by Verne and stuff like that, when a lot of those guys crossing through the areas that you were at wrestling?
Oh, they just, I friends with Ricky and Ricky Steamboat and Rick and I mean they just told they told stories of Greg's dad, that he was just the toughest son of a gun they'd ever been around their entire life, and of course being from growing up in Virginia and being just around the regionalized promotions I grew up around, I didn't even know the AWA existed until I was, in my late teens, because I hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen the product, but what those guys went through in the camps. Just past weekend, I just confirmed that story again. I was sitting there with my son, and Rick came and sat down at a table and had his dinner with us, and I said, how about that training camp with Verne? And he said he came and drug me out twice. He said I quit 2 times and he wouldn't let me. But they all, they've all said the same thing, but it all molded that work ethic and respect for the business, into all those guys that, all ultimately went on to become great stars. And it was because of their potential, obviously, that they had the chops to be able to go on and make some of them themselves. But if you don't have a foundation, it's hard to have something to build from. And there's been guys that come down different paths, and I certainly had a completely different path myself, but they all kind of revolved around you had to either sink or swim or produce, or you were just going to be a statistic. Because to Greg's point, so many guys, found themselves in the business and in and out 6, 8, 10 years and never made it, above a, opening match type performer. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, because it takes everybody to have a card. You've got to have carpenters and people that help set the stage and do the things and set you up for the main events. But as it evolved and what Greg and I saw the business become, it became where from the opening match to the main event, everybody had to be excellent. And there was no spot for newbies wanting to learn. You might be on television and be involved in a squash match and be a newbie, but you wouldn't be on a $100,000 card and even be the opening match if you couldn't go out there and, and give them a main event match. And that's what it became. So the things that his dad instilled in people and the respect about the business that we all, love so much was, why we've got this bond today here 30, 40 years after the fact. We're all tied together like we were, we were fighting for the country or in the blooming mob or something. You don't get out of the business once it's in your blood. You're in it forever.
Yeah. Sting's the perfect example.
Yeah.
What I wanted to follow up to, Greg, how long, when Verne trained people, how long did he take for him to kind of smarten people up a little bit? Or like, what was the threshold of that, basically?
Jim Brunsell, give a great story.
Okay.
Now it's his first match. We're out of the camp. His first match. He's in the locker room. I forget who he's wrestling. And he's nervous as heck. And he's just going to go out to the ring. And Verne stops him and he says, Jim, you're going over tonight. Here's where it's going to be. Boom, boom, boom. It was like Jim said, the air finally went out of him.
On the way to the ring, smartened him up.
That's when he smartened us up.
Wow. How about that?
I mean, yeah, it was mind. He never did, boy. And I'll tell you, our training camp was tough. It was 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And in the last hour, we had to do submission wrestling with Verne and Billy Robinson. And, and they'd show you about 4 different holds. And then they'd get on the mat with you, and we'd get in one at a time, and they'd put the arm out there. You go, oh yeah, the arm. And then as you go to do it and put the hold on, they would reverse it and stick your foot right up your ass, and you're screaming, oh my God, so it was pretty, it was pretty intense. But when we came out of there, we were prepared and we were ready. And in fact, I remember one of the first matches Rick and I had against each other. We were in Peoria, Illinois, and we're on the first match, and it's a 20-minute draw. 2 minutes into the match, I body slam Rick, and the ring caved in. And he was down there, and the referee slid down. I dove down and covered Rick. And the referee
Hey, Nate,
doesn't want any more stories about him.
what's happened? Stop
So anyhow,
talking.
they got down on Rick and covered a 1-2, kicked out. And we wrestled a 20-minute draw with the ring caved in.
Oh my God.
And that was only our second match we'd ever had. And we came back to the locker room, and Nick Bockwinkel, Ray Stevens, they grabbed us to the side and they said, guys, we don't think anybody else in the business could do what you guys just did. It was phenomenal. So then it goes back to, it wasn't us, it was how we were trained. And we could handle something like that. I mean, we were prepared. And I guess that's the message that was sent.
Wow. And you mentioned his name too, Brad Reagan's, and like a lot of people credit him for like what he instilled into people too. And so like that being transitioned down from him to, you know, other people that Reagan's was known to train, it really speaks to Verne.
Brad kind of took over the training camp for Verne.
Mm-hmm.
Verne would go out there once in a while, but a guy named Leon White.
Oh.
Where did he wrestle by?
Vader.
Yep. We're in Denver wrestling, and the matches are over, and we're in the hotel, and this guy comes up. He said, I'm a representative for Leon White here. And I said, well, who's Leon White? And he's 340 pounds sitting down on the table there, the cowboy hat on. And he said, well, he played for the Los Angeles Rams. He was an All-American at University of Colorado, played football there, played for the Rams, and he wants to wrestle. And you know, he beats people up in the bar all the time. And I said, well, he should. He's 340 pounds. Well, that's what you do to your wrestlers. And I said, there's not a wrestler here that he could handle. I said, he can try me if he wants. I'll knock the crap out of him right here. You know, he's looking like this. So we finally got him to come, and he came to the camp. And I told him, I said, you know, here's a guy over here, Brad Ringens. He was on the first match. You couldn't beat him. He didn't know Brad's background, right? So Brad gets him in the camp, and I told Brad about him. He had Leon crying after about 20 minutes. He wanted to quit. The big guy, 340 pounds, he's crying. Brad is tying him up a notch, just having him scream, just did a number on him, throwing him around. You know, he had no idea, you know, and people coming into the sport of wrestling, if they don't have that background, they think anybody can do it. There's so much technique to it and so much you have to learn and do. It's ungodly to become, you know, to get to that level where you can wrestle in the main events and you know, put people's asses in the seats.
Right. And like
it's an amazing sport. It really is. It's
right.
You know, everybody thinks they can do it and it's easy. TA will tell you it's not.
It's like a dad that plays around with their kids, and you know, like, and their kids keep getting bigger, and they like to wrestle around with them, and they think, man, I get tired doing this, trying to quit this kind of stuff, and you're getting too big for this. When you get out there with a bunch of grown men from 250 to 300 pounds that are all making contact, that are all in motion, and are doing something actively for anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, and the physicality that takes place just when you make contact is so severe that I've never been in a street fight in my life that even remotely compares to the brutality of what we did for the sake of entertaining people. Mm-hmm. And it was almost comical because whenever you would get in, you know, something happened outside of our world, I would like, first of all, people aren't that size. I was used to being around people that were 30, 40, 50 pounds bigger than me. And the average guy, and, you know, the average guy would walk around the streets $170, you know, and so, you know, I tried to, you know, tell them, you know, you would have to literally like hit me with the kitchen sink and everything with it for me to even register it, because I'm just used to getting potatoed left, right, upside down, you know, and doing it to others too, in the sake of making sure you don't see through what I'm doing, because we're fighting out on the floor, we're fighting all over the place. And I mean, you know, there was no leg slapping to make a sound effect when we were having the I Quit match, you know, or or when Nikita and I were in the Russian chain match and that thing spins around and smacks you in the head and goes crack. I mean, all those things were very physical. They were dangerous, and even if you knew what you're doing, you were going to get hurt to a degree. But you got so used to that, your mental toughness and physical toughness was on such a level that, I mean, something really drastic would have to happen for you to even put it over and to sell it. I mean, seriously, because I mean, got the Road Warriors, for instance. I mean, Road Warrior Animal throw you off the ropes. He's 320 pounds and gives you a scoop power slam. And when you spin through the air and you hit the mat at a 20-mile-an-hour impact with a 300-pound body on top of you, that would put most people in the hospital for a number of months. And you're getting up and selling and going on and wrestling another 20 minutes, after something like that. And that was what we were doing 7 days a week. And that's the hard part for people to wrap their head around. When I was a kid watching, I used to think, oh, when they come to my town, like that's the only time these guys are wrestling all week. I didn't realize they were doing this 7 days a week. And thinking then, by the way, there's TV and there's matinees on Sunday and, all this stuff. And you can go 11, 12 times in a week. And, by the way, if you're selling out, you're not going to get a day off for maybe 90 days. And so if you're not tough, you're not going to make it through. You don't get paid if you don't play. And there is no stand-in for you. So you either get in that groove and become the ever-ready, money that can just go and go and go. And, by the way, you still got to be able to stay up all night and play all the drinking games and everything else that get going on. On top of that, your mental toughness gets challenged even more. So you got to be in shape. You got to be a superior athlete. You got to be able to outdrink anybody and outfight anybody and never be late for work. Outside that, it's easy.
Yeah, it seems like a cakewalk.
I
want to do it now.
Oh, Jesus. It takes a good 6 weeks, though. We do 1,000 bumps a day in an hour and hit the ropes for an hour. And, and tear all the skin off your body and you were black and blue. And that lasts for about 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden it would all go away. I remember one night I came home and my wife had left a cupboard open and I banged my head on it, split me open. I hit it pretty hard and I just kept going. And she goes, "You're bleeding." But I really didn't even, I felt the bump, but didn't know it was that bad. But what TA is saying, your body hardens up. And you can absorb that punishment majority of the time. Man. Sometimes when you can't take it, though.
Back to music, it's like when you play guitar and you get calluses.
You get one night we're wrestling Stan Hansen and Bobby Duncombe, tag team match, Jim and I. And Jim had a hell of a drop kick, and he hit Hansen with a drop kick, and Stan flew and landed in the ropes. He was kind of out of it. And he starts to get up, so Jim tags me in. And old Stan sees me, and he nails me, and he sluts me up on the turnbuckle. And this was in Winnipeg. Threw me from one turnbuckle all the way to across the ring into the other one upside down. And I laid there, and I tagged Jim quit. And all I said was, "You asshole." You can have him back. And by then Stan took Duncombe back in. And I said, I've talked to Stan about it since. He says, "Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, Jim knocked you out and he took it all out on me."
Yeah, it was him. He did it.
Yeah. Then we had King Kong Brody and Hansen. We had him in a tournament match in Japan. And we get out in the ring and we're standing there talking, and all of a sudden I said, "Geez, look out." And man, I get hit with a cowbell. Jim gets hit with the chain. Out of the ring we go, through the people. They hit us with a fire extinguisher. We both got cut up. The match hasn't even started. They're coming back, and Hansen can't see too good. And this one little Japanese guy got up and the chair went down. So I took it and I threw it like a frisbee at Hansen, hit him right on the bridge of the nose. His feet went up, busted his nose. And we ended up wrestling 34 minutes like that. And at the end, Brody had Jim, and I came off the top rope with an elbow, dropped him to his knees, and I see Jim go flying out of the ring, over the ring. Hansen threw him out, and I look up, and Brody bear hugs me, relaxed my arms in, and his head's here. He's on his knees, and Hansen comes firing across the ring and hit me with the lariat. And that was the last thing I remembered.
I bet.
Yeah. And then we had to meet him in the finals of the thing. It ended up the four of us in the finals. So we had just knockdown matches with them, and they were so physical. When Brody kicked you, you thought your head was up in the balcony. It was. But you know what? If you fought them, they respected you, and we earned their respect.
That's what I hear about Brody. Yeah, it's like if you messed back with him, if you were able to fight back at him, he would respect you even more, and that would definitely kind of got you crossed through. So,
he worked in the AWA. He worked with Jerry Blackwell, and then with Sergeant Slaughter. And on both of them, he walked out of the ring, and he told the promoter Wally Carbo, "What do you think of that?" And he says, "We could have a match." He said, "I don't want to work with him."
Really?
He pointed at me. He says, "I want to work with him." I said, "I don't want to work with you." Sort of ended up and worked a little program with him, but kind of did it in tag team matches. He took Nord the Barbarian, and I had Jim back.
Wow.
So, well, he was, if you earned their respect, you had good matches with him. But he didn't like working with. If he didn't like working with you, boy, it was a tough night. It was tough anyhow, but it was interesting.
Man, well, we'll be covering Verne plenty on here, more so moving forward, obviously, and throughout the whole series of this show. But I did want to ask real quick, Greg, before we get to the action figure aspect of it. Now, I guess this will be a two-part question. Did Verne want you, did he always kind of motivate you to get into wrestling? And secondly, did you always want to be into wrestling?
I wanted to play pro football.
Okay.
They wanted to do. I know my dad took me to a match. Oh, God, I was probably 6 or 7 years old in the St. Paul Auditorium. Kinji Shibuya, Mitsu Arakawa wrestled the Koloff brothers, and all four of them were bloody and messy afterwards. And my dad walked me down the hallway, and there was different locker rooms. And I look into one, and there's Mitsu Arakawa and Kinji Shibuya, the doctor stitching them up. And then he goes, and there's the two Russian Takamikov brothers. They're getting stitched up. And my dad used to tell me, he said, Greg looked up at me and said, "Dad, one thing I know for sure, I never want to be a wrestler." But after I got out of college, I told him when he was having this camp, I said, "Dad, I'd like to wrestle." He said, "What makes you think you can wrestle?" Oh. I said, "Well, I wrestled you my whole life. I mean, shit, every time I was home, you're taking me downstairs and, wrestling on the mat." And I said, and I played football with Jim Brunzell. And I said, "We got a guy, Ric Flair, that wants to join." So he said, "We'll give you a shot then." But he made it very difficult. And then the hardest thing, and he said, "You have to learn how to be yourself, because you're gonna take a lot of crap from a lot of people, because of me, Verne." He said, "So don't try to be me. Try to be who you are, who you really are. Be yourself." And he said, "You actually knew how to wrestle." When I was about 12 or 13, my 6-year-old sister, when my grandparents would come over, we'd do a wrestling match for them, and I'd be taking bumps for her and her throwing me around, and then she'd clamp the sleeper on me and I'd go out. I was really working at about 12 years old.
Yeah, you might not have been smart enough, but you were doing it.
Yeah. And then I came home from college. We're playing quarterback out at Wyoming, and we have Christmas break, and then we have our winter football where we have to go back. And I get home, and Verne says, "Come on, let's go downstairs." Put all the furniture away. My mom would, no, you can't be doing this.
Come on, guys.
So we're doing the wrestling, and he's holding me down, and I'm getting pissed off. I can't get away from him. So finally, I elbow him in the nose, and when I did, he would crack 2 ribs.
Oh my!
Honest to God. So now I got to go back to Wyoming, right? And we got winter going, and we got to do these sprints to start with. And Christ, I'm dying. And the coach says, "Are you that out of shape?" He said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Well, Coach, I got on the floor with my dad. We used to wrestle in the basement all the time, and he cracked a couple ribs." And of course, all the coaches are laughing their ass off, then. But that was a interesting little episode in the life of my father.
How about that?
Yeah. But, he just, I was very fortunate, really was. We finally wrestled in a tag team match one night. Only 3 times in my life did he ever give us any kudos.
Really?
My last football game in high school, I threw, it was like 12 out of 14 passes for 200 or 300 yards, ran for 100 and some, and he came down and he told me, "I'm proud of you, son." And then the next one was Jim and I wrestled Tito Santana and Rick Martel in San Francisco in the Cow Palace. Mm-hmm. We're the champions, and it's a big card that night. We're on the semi or the double main event. So Martel and Santana walk out to the ring in the Cow Palace, and the people were so hard. And as we walk out, they're all going, "Boring, bullshit, boring." And we're going, "Oh my God, I guess we're going to get cheered then." That's Martel and
Tito.
There goes the phone again. And Tito. So then we walk out and we get the same thing. So for 18 minutes, we were supposed to go 20 some minutes. For 18 minutes, Jim and I are just fighting out of holes and doing spots, and they're getting us back in it. And from boring bullshit, all of a sudden, in about 18 minutes, we got them standing. Wow. So then we ended up going 45 minutes with them. And we had them up and down and up and down. And we came back into the locker room. Everybody, Bockwinkel, Stevens, everybody on the card came up to us, and Verne was last. And he said, "I'm proud of you guys. That's the best match I've ever seen." He took me aside and said, that was one of the other kudos he gave me. And then the third time is we were wrestling a tag match, Verne and I against Saito and Bockwinkel. And it was, Verne was probably in 65 at the time. But so I carried most of the match. And after the match, he came up, he said, "You're better than me. I'm proud." So those are the three times that he ever gave me any credit.
Wow.
They meant a lot.
I bet if they did. Yeah. The rare that happens, it's like the more impact it makes.
Yep. So, it was tough coming, I wasn't trying to be like him. I was trying to be myself. And he said, "That's the way you have to do it. And don't pay any attention to what they say. You're going to get a lot of negative things. You're too small. You can't do this. You can't do that. Just go in and do your thing."
Yeah.
And we were taught and sight and make some good comebacks, and got established that way.
That's what you got to do, right?
Yeah. So I was very, very fortunate, and it was a good run for me.
Well, cool. This is fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to getting more perspective of Verne's ideas and what his mindset was throughout this whole thing as we talk further on these episodes and stuff. Real quick, you guys, let's talk about the figure itself, the Verne Gagne figure that Powertown Series 1. I don't know, Magnum, have you had more experience with this, or give us a little details on some of this if you guys want to.
Well, the first of all, the thing that our artists, were really priding themselves on was making these figures to scale. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you see so many things that are like really exaggerated in, just the action figure world in general. And we tried to do these things to where if you put all of our figures in a row and the true heights of the individuals, you'll see that difference in each one of them. And we really, took some strides in doing that and wanting them to have more of a realistic look to them than a exaggerated like superhero look with a waist that's so skinny that, it couldn't possibly, be in real proportion. And, and in doing so, not only are the head sculpts absolutely amazing, but the bodies really are truly more representative of what, the different athletes look like. I mean, it's still a little exaggerated in some places, but in generally the scale, the waist size, the girth, the height, the leg size, all that stuff, they're more in proportion, kind of in reality of where the guys were at. and I think it made him a marketably different product. So he didn't just look like we were throwing another superhero line out, which our Remco line coming out has all got that superhero-ish look. But these are really more depictions of what the athletes actually looked like. So I think our artists are second to none. In the head sculpts, when you look at them, when I first took it out of the box, I was looking at it. I was afraid it was going to move. Like this is a little voodoo doll or something. But no, they're really accurate, and if we can continue with that same kind of authentic looks to what we're doing moving forward, it's just going to continue to be a very prestigious line. But people talked about Verne particularly because we did him in his youth and his heyday with a full head of hair, and I think it's just great because you want to see somebody at their peak, and to see a young, youthful Verne Gagne is just the coolest thing ever, I think.
Yeah, Greg, what
Well, they did from the looks of the 1950s. Him and Lou, how they looked in 1950. We try to do it by their decades, and take that look. And Brody and Hansen in their decade, and Kerry Von Erich, and who am I missing here?
We have
Magnum TA.
Hey, that guy.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, him.
Well, hey, I had some other topics, but I wanted we got to give this our spotlight the appropriate amount. We'll be talking about him, much like Verne. We will throughout this whole series, the show and everything like that. But I figured what a good follow up from Ric Flair last week would be to cover the guy we were talking about earlier, none other than the blue collar man himself, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, son of a plumber daddy. So let's start with Greg. What was your first experience with Dusty? And your initial thoughts?
I was in the early days with Dusty, when Dusty and Dick Murdoch, Joe Blanchard sent him up to Verne. Mm-hmm. And then I told the stories last week about Dusty and Murdoch, and there's a lot more that went on in Minneapolis, but he shipped them. I thought he shipped them to Charlotte, but he shipped them to Eddie Graham.
Oh, yeah, Florida, yeah.
That's where Dusty and Dick went from Minneapolis. Verne had a good connection with Eddie. They were good buddies, along with Fritz Von Erichs and Joe Blanchard. So they usually traded the talent that way. And oh God, they were such a wild pair. We were just starting out, and like I told you, Flair had the cowboy hats and cowboy boots. He thought he was Dusty.
Yeah.
And he wanted to be Dusty in the worst way, but Dusty was just a phenomenal talent. Not enough people gave him the credit he deserved in the ring in his early days. Son of the plumber, that's great. He didn't have the great body. And, in those earlier days, they were more into athletics. Well, once Dusty got in the ring, he was phenomenal in there. And there wasn't a better interviewer anywhere in the world than Dusty. And where he came up with some of this stuff, it was unbelievable. But he related to the public so well that son of the plumber, man, and he worked that thing over. Those people just gathered around him. Phenomenal talent and a mind for the business, like any of the best. There was a few of them, and he was right up there with all of them. With the few that really knew wrestling and how to book it, Dusty was as good as any, if not better.
What was Verne's big thoughts on him initially too?
Oh, he loved. Yeah. Verne loved guys like that.
Yeah.
It was just he couldn't handle the trouble they were getting in with all the time. Jesus, come in, Dusty, Dick, you can't be doing that. Well, Verne, okay, we won't do it again. And then the next town, something else. Gee, you guys, you call them in. That was Verne. You could always see, oh, God, geez. I'll never forget that look. We heard it more times when Dusty was with the AWA than anybody else.
Well, it's kind of neat. So right before we started recording here, I Googled for pictures, like the one that we found here was Verne and Dusty there together. But before I saw that, I happened to see this tweet that Dusty made when Verne passed away. And here he said, "Mr. Gagne, thanks for all you did for me." Pretty cool.
Yeah.
What would you say, like, from maybe Dusty's perspective, that Verne did do for him and like elevating him forward?
I think he helped him with the storytelling in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he would just give him a little theme about the interview, and then Dusty would go off with it. So he had no problems with that. In the ring and his character, I think he helped him develop it. At that time, he was teamed up with Dick Murdoch, but Verne saw that he's a star on his own. And this is what he needs to do it. And I think he took Dusty under his wing that way, and Dusty listened to him and did the things he told him to do in the ring. And, you know, Verne loved him, but had to get him out.
I love you, but you gotta leave.
I don't want to do this, but guys, it's how many times, you know, the police call us up and you got riding in on a donkey into the bar and Murdoch coming in with the guns going. Oh my God.
Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable.
Well, Magnum, I'm really intrigued to get your initial thoughts on Dusty, because you watched him on television before you got on there, right? And before you started tuning in. So first impressions as Dusty as a fan, and then when you actually got to meet him and everything, what were your first impressions?
Yeah, I could write an entire book about those years, because it was every day was so unbelievable that most people wouldn't believe it. Dusty and I, Barry Windham, we were traveling back from, I think it was West Palm or somewhere, but we're cutting across out in the middle of nowhere, and we're always talking about these big dreams. We were going to go to get a place in Billings, Montana, and get a ranch out there that when we retired, we'd all be able to go out there and go hunting. And we talked about, so we got to talking about jumping in freight cars one night. So we're sitting and driving out, like I said, out in the middle of nowhere, and lo and behold, here comes a train, and there's no the signs come down or anything. We're in the middle of nowhere. You just stopped. Saw a train coming, the lights came on, you stopped. So we stopped, and he said, "You boys haven't ever jumped a train?" I said, "No." We all jump out of the car, out of the truck, and we go running. We jump up, grab the handle, and we're sitting on a boxcar. And we're all laughing, think it's funny. And then we're looking, and the car is getting farther and farther, farther away. And then it hits all of us that we're going to have to run or walk or do something. We left it running too in the middle of the street. And we jump off, and it's like a cornfield or something we're beside. We got to walk all the way back, and we're sweating and fussing, and but it was things so spontaneous with him that he just had this spirit of almost like Peter Pan. I mean, it was just bigger than life. And to y'all's point about the unlikely looking athlete, I mean, this is a guy that tried out with the New York Yankees in the Superdome back when they were pitching with the yellow fastball, so you can see him inside. And he was that good of a baseball player in college, and he played football all through school, and he could play basketball, and there was really nothing that he couldn't do. His coordination was just absolutely stellar, and he loved to sing. I know Greg probably seen him get up at the bar and do his Johnny good renditions. But he loved to entertain, and he was friends with Willie Nelson and Hank Jr. and David Allen Coe, and just a host of people in the country music industry that were all as big a fans of him as he was of them. And got to spend a lot of time around a lot of neat people because of his personality and his bigger than life persona. When he walked in a room, it was electric, and it was like people. He was a big man. First of all, most people don't realize. I mean, but when he was going hard, he was about 320 pounds, and he could go, and he could go 60 minutes in the ring, and you don't move like that and do those kind of things for 60 minutes unless you got something in the tank, and he could do it. So, from a performer, he was, hands down, one of the best at storytelling. And from the creative standpoint, not only what he could envision for himself, but what he could envision for others. And that's where his and my ride, went on this linear path when I came to work for the Crockett's, and he just had, the biggest dreams for me and things that he wanted me to do, not only in the career, but we were already off to Hollywood in his mind. He'd written a full-blown screenplay that he wanted to produce, so that he wanted me to star in.
Yeah.
And he had this adventures that I was going to go on, and I had a little mouse called Gus that was going to be animated and sit on my shoulder to be my conscience. He'd written this whole thing out and told me we'd talk about it at nighttime, and he's working on it and all this deal. And wrestling was just a thing to a thing to a thing. It was like he saw the world like Cecil B. DeMille's, and always tried to bring that across on the camera and things he did. I mean, the I Quit finish match deal was something that he saw himself playing out. It was a John Wayne move. It was finally beating the dastardly, heel villain you've been fighting for your entire career, and you beat him and you wanted to kill him, but you let him live. And that's kind of the way he, relayed it to me. And that's the story we told at the end of that match. And he saw all those things panoramically. So it was just so neat to spend time in that space with him when he was still at his peak of performance and still, having his classic matches, his feuds with Flair, and and seeing the family man that loved his wife and kids, along with all that, sharing his regrets and wishing he'd had more with Dustin. Dustin didn't get to spend, great time with his dad till he was like 16 years old. He missed all that. And, Dustin, I'm sure, had some envy towards Cody, because Cody got to have dad the whole time and help coach him through school and football and all his athletic endeavors, and then go on to do what he did. So I saw the elements of the man behind the scene and those pains of realizing that you're not eternally youthful. And at some point in time, you've got to hang it all up. But I remember Cody saying, he said, you think you're over and you think you're in a place, and then your dad comes out and he's just got a big old sloppy shirt on and the heels are coming to confront us, and your dad just takes his hat off and throws it at him and gets a bigger pop than anything that happens. And the whole night, he's still that over. And to be that, be that big, that over. I'm glad that they've recognized him the way they had, built that amazing statue to him, remember him in the tag team tournaments and things they do in his memory. I mean, the WWE has done right by him. And I thanked the McMahon family from my heart at his funeral for giving him the dignity and opportunities they gave him later in his life to be a coach and a mentor, because he was able to share that passion in his heart and pour it into these young Seth Rollins and Ashleys and, these kids that have gone on to be superstars, beyond, what anybody would have ever imagined. And they got a piece of him in them. And it's just magic. I love it.
Next week, you have to have the mouse on your shoulder.
I know. I'm gonna wait till I Photoshop. I'm gonna have a lot of fun with that.
I got one more Dusty Murdoch story.
Go for it.
Flair and I were wrestling in Duluth, Minnesota, and Dusty and Murdoch are up there that night. And so we're following him in the car. The matches are over. They stop, get the beer. We get the beer. We're driving down the road from Duluth, Minnesota, back down to Minneapolis, about 170 miles. So we've had enough beer where Dick and Dusty pull over. So we pull over and we get out of the car to relieve ourselves. And as we both get out and we're looking at them smiling, and they're both standing there, they both pull out 45 Magnums and fire them over our heads. All we saw was the flame come out. We hit the ground. They got back in the car and took off, and we're still down on the ground. Right, what the hell happened? Oh, they were insane.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Flair didn't really get his thing out, though. He kind of peed in his pants. That even made it better.
Holy, the nature boy takes its course.
Yeah. So you won't hear that on any other podcast.
No, yeah, that's a rarity I haven't heard. Well, man, like you said it, you guys both said it, like from his ability as a promo and then even as an athlete. Like, it's so funny that I kind of like I associate him with Muhammad Ali so much because, I know Dusty, I think, was very influenced by him in certain ways. But in turn, it's kind of neat because Muhammad Ali was influenced by Gorgeous George. And then you get that kind of transition in those athletes. Like Muhammad Ali is somebody that really transcended sports. And Dusty Magnum, for what you were saying, had those kind of intentions for what his plans were to kind of be outside of sports in a lot of ways and stuff like that. And it's outside of pro wrestling. And it's I don't know. Yeah, and it's cool to see the credit that he gets nowadays, and his legacy gets carried on not just through Cody, not just through Dustin, but to those kids that were down in NXT at the time that he was able to teach and kind of instill and further help his legacy, but help them build their own legacies moving forward in a lot of ways.
He was a special guy.
Mm-hmm. Magnum, early on, what did Dusty see in you early on that really stood out to him? Do you think?
He saw a character that I hadn't pulled out yet, and he didn't know exactly what it was either. He just knew I had that thing. So when I went to work for Bill and took on the Magnum TA persona, the name, we didn't know what Magnum TA was. That was just a name, and they had me in everything from Brooks Brothers suits to punk rock clothes to you name it, trying to get me to find something that they could find appealing. And the truth of the matter is, after I'd been there 6 months and they couldn't figure it out, and Ernie said, "Kid, it's just not working." And I said, "Okay." So I called Dusty up, and Dusty said, "You like to ride motorcycles, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I've ridden motorcycles my whole life." He said, "You go buy you a new Harley Davidson, go get you a leather jacket." He said, "I'm bringing you back here as Magnum TA, the Lone Wolf. And we're going to let you ride that motorcycle into all the towns. You just come in by yourself, your lone wolf babyface type character." And I drove to Baton Rouge with Jim Duggan. I bought a brand new Harley Davidson, bought the leather jacket. I rode it into a town that I was wrestling that night, and the whole world flipped right then and there in Louisiana. It's like I was they'd been seeing me for 6 months. It's like they'd never seen me before. I walked in the dressing room. The whole vibe was different. Everybody saw this thing happen. And when Bill Watts saw it, I go to shake Bill's hand and said, "Bill, it's been great working with you. I'm on my way to Florida." He said, no, you're not going anywhere. But it was Dusty that went ahead and pushed me to say, what is it that you like? What is it that you're passionate about and you can be comfortable in your own skin, just like Greg was talking about he did with CM Punk. And I found, I was like the Fonz. From the minute I put the jacket on, everything changed. And the people's perception of me changed. I got an identity, and it just all took off from there. But he knew when people had something within them that they didn't know how to pull out themselves. He didn't necessarily know right off the bat what it was, but he would study you, watch you, and see. Before I'd gone to Mid-South, he had me tagged up with guys like Brad Armstrong, who was a tremendous performer, and Scott McGee, both. And they had us holding the tag team titles, and we were going out every night working 30 to 45 minutes with the Royal Kangaroos. And the time that he allowed me to be in the ring, that ring time for a solid 6 months of going 30 to 45 minutes every night with seasoned pros, is what helped develop me and bring me, where I was ready to take that next step. So he knew how to cultivate young people from the get-go, and he knew how to recognize aptitude that people had that they didn't even realize was within themselves.
He brought out your inner personality. He brought out the real Magnum TA.
That's awesome.
And that's what's hard with young wrestlers is they try to be somebody they're not. Mm-hmm. And once you find that comfortable being who you really are and let that out, boom, it goes. And Dusty saw it in TA, and brought out his personality, and from there on.
Now, Magnum, as a follow-up, did you pay for that whole Harley Davidson, or did they help you?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too.
No, I bought it. I remember very, very, very well. And it was like, I mean, to see something happen so instantly like that was like, yeah, I mean, it was very cinematic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, like you were in the movie and watching the reactions on people's faces, seeing something for the first time they've ever seen that wasn't pre-planned, wasn't thought out. I had no desire to make an impact on those people that night in that town. I was just going through the motions of picking up my new motorcycle and getting my gear because I'm going to Florida. And they just happened to be a stop on the way. And that stop on the way left me there for another year. And I had a pretty good run.
How about that? How about that?
What did the motorcycle cost you?
$7,000.
$7,000. I tell you what, you fit a Harley though, Magnum.
Yep.
You fit a Harley for sure.
Yep.
Okay, your thoughts on Dusty as a booker? Greg, did during that time, like when Dusty kind of was operating some certain things and stuff like that, what did Verne kind of think, or what did you kind of think of his booking ability and or his mind?
He didn't get a chance to do that with us at the AWA.
Right. But seeing it like what he
down,
did
down the road.
Yeah.
Down the road, yeah. When you could see wherever Dusty, he left his mark no matter wherever he was, and he had a mind on him, and he had that thing that few people have. You can see the talent, what needs to be brought out in him. And he was excellent at doing that. And then how to match him up. And he was very creative. I mean, some of the matches he came up with, I don't think with Verne's philosophy with the wrestling, we probably wouldn't have been able to get by with some of those. Even though if Verne did them, they would have got over.
Yeah.
And Dusty knew it, but some of them were a little far out for Verne's thinking and his presentation. It was about wrestling and that, but you had to have those characters too. And he loved Dusty and Dick. I mean, they'd have been there forever if he could have kept the police from calling the office all the time.
They weren't firing 45s over their coworkers' heads.
That one night, the police twice called, and then I don't know how many more times after that. He said, he called Eddie, and Eddie, I got two guys here. They're phenomenal. You're going to love them. They're going to get over for you to make you money, but we can't keep them up here. They're going to end up in jail. So that's where it went.
Well, Magnum, what did you think of Dusty as a booker when he took the pencil?
I thought he did an amazing job to book for Virgil Runnels to book Dusty Rhodes like a player along with the other cast of characters. Because when he was in Florida, it was kind of one-dimensional. It was all built around Dusty. Dusty did everything. But when he got to the Crockett's, and all of a sudden we were deep in talent, and we had guys like the Rock and Roll Express that were bringing in the youth and the really, the young, the teeny bopper girls. And we had, of course, we had Flair and Tully and Arn and JJ and Ole, that such solid, credible, heels that was like he couldn't be involved in every angle. So he had no choice but to pick a path and pick a lane, and then also pick lanes for other folks that would be, equally beneficial, because at one time we were running 3 towns a night. So you needed you had to have a strong main event in all 3 of those towns, and we were selling out 3 towns a night. It got to be a little bit of a rib, because the Rock and Roll were so hot that they were, they were rivaling the big buildings sometimes with the crowds that they were drawing in the smaller venues. And I think that was a little bit of a pet peeve of Dusty, because he wanted to have this, he was like John Wayne, and he had his clique around him, and that was supposed to be the pinnacle for everybody to want to get to. It's like the pecking order of who got on what plane. We had 2 planes. We had a Falcon 20 jet and we had a Gulfstream big prop plane that would carry about 19 people, and the jet would carry about 9. And the good party was really on the Gulfstream, but you had to be in the it crowd to get on the jet, because it was, he'd go 600 miles an hour and beat everybody home, and it was all that. But but the little things like that, you were in a group. It was definitely a bit of a political animal, and and if you found yourself on the wrong side of the pencil, which thankfully I never did, but I saw the wrath of that with a few people that had to go to purgatory for a couple of months till they got their act back together. Tully playfully talks about the time he went from being in all the A team places. So I think he had to do about a 3-month program with Jimmy Valiant. And love Jimmy to this day, but Jimmy's such a polar opposite stylization wise of Tully, who's a hard hitting, fast, up and down, in your face kind of heel, and Boogie's running around, kiss you on the lips and all this stuff, and just funny, being funny and comical, which he could get over, and he did. He had a tremendous career doing all that. But again, for a guy like Tully, that was purgatory, because that just wasn't comfortable in his wheelhouse. So,
was that aspect too, when he would make those kind of decisions of putting somebody in purgatory almost? Do you think that was a pretty sound move on his part? Like, it was pretty justified, and then like it ultimately helped that talent like moving forward? Like, okay, I got to kind of readjust what I did wrong.
I can't say definitively, because there were so many moving pieces going on. Like, if somebody got out of the lane I was in and they got veered off into any other direction, I was so tunnel vision into what I was doing that I really wasn't even like keeping up with the other programs, the other things that were going on. I mean, there were some great feuds. I mean, Manny Fernandez and Wahoo McDaniels had some classic battles here after Wahoo had dropped the strap to me, and I'd gone on to my angles. Those two had some crazy matches, and Abdullah the Butcher was here, and those guys were, I mean, just all tearing it up. And so like half the guys were all from the AWA. I mean, we had Baron von Raschke, and of course Steamboat. Steamboat was here a little while when I got here, and he went on to the WWF because he had been a big star in Mid-Atlantic. But when I came in, and I mean, he was a very savvy businessman. He could see the handwriting on the wall, the push that I was getting, and Dusty being a babyface too. There's only so many spots,
right.
If you're going to be in that main event chase. So he was pretty quick to move north, take a different career path. But yeah, there wasn't like anywhere was bad. You were going to make good money no matter what. We had like 200 guys living in Charlotte, North Carolina at one time, all working 12 months out of the year, all making big money. I mean, if you came down on the TV taping day when we taped all of our spot show interviews and whatnot, it looked like some kind of Hollywood's who's who parking lot. I mean, literally, there's the Mercedes and Porsches and Corvettes and Jaguars just lined up in the lot. That was, all of us, crazy people that were inside, doing our thing. But I mean, everybody was making big money. I mean, from the opening match, card was making 6 figures.
Wow. Jeez, that's crazy.
George South, who's a dear friend of mine, and we still stay in touch a lot today, lives here. He was the first guy to put me over on TBS in 1985, I guess, when we went on the show, in like 15, 20 seconds. Hey, George, this is Magnum. We've never met. You're going to go bing, bang, boom. He's going to give you the belly. It's over. That's what we met. But he laughs when he talks because he worked basically his entire career kind of underneath. Mm-hmm. And he's gone on he's still wrestling today. Yeah. And has had wrestling schools and taught people. And great. But he says that I bought him 3 houses. I mean, because he literally did so well those years. I mean, he just raked the money in. He wasn't running around trying to live like a rock star, and bought land and bought houses, and he was smart with his money, and everybody was able to, walk away from there with something to show for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's like, yeah, the impact that, all that stuff happening with Dusty, like, his mind for the business is just, it's really one of a kind when it comes to certain aspects of it. And like you learn from Eddie Graham and just like all the experience that he's had it's pretty cool. And like we mentioned, the legacy that he carries on. Let me close with this. What do you guys, Greg, we'll start with you. What do you guys think that the modern talent today could learn from Dusty Rhodes? The biggest thing that they could learn from a Dusty Rhodes?
The new talent, the young talent?
Yeah, young talent today. What do you think they could adapt and try to take from the mindset of Dusty?
Well, I think they'd be smart to jump on board. If they're not, they're probably not going to make it. And I think that's the best way I can put it. There was, with his mind and the way he knew what the average person or the wrestling fan wanted from the personalities, there was anybody better than him to give it to them. And if they're not going to take what he says, then, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
Right. I know. Like you take it, a lot of those people from NXT, from Bailey to you name it, like Charlotte, you were saying, and even Enzo Amore, like they took a lot from him. Like it's just, it's really, I mean, for what he's instilled on a lot of those guys, and you can tell how appreciative a lot of those talents are. Magnum, what would you say, like a big aspect that some modern talent that could really garner from Dusty today moving forward?
I think that Dusty's strongest suit was his ability to communicate, and that he would, try to find each individual's way to have a voice that connected them to your audience, and through what you said, to be able to say things not necessarily the loudest or the most intense, but with a passion that comes off as if it's for real, as if it's coming from your heart. So if you could learn anything from him and studying him, it would be the way to see the way he found a path to connect to those fans. He carried that connection on to the ring, the way he sold, the way he made them part of his fight back, his comeback, his victories, his losses. Everybody lived it vicariously. You didn't watch him and go think, I'm going to go get some popcorn and a hot dog. You on into this man's struggle and this contest, and he did it. He talked you in the building, and then was able to translate that story into the work in the ring. And that's what the masters that are out there today, the Randy Ortons, watching Edge last night, can still do the exact same thing. Take an interview, talk to the camera, look at it, and make them believe you're talking to them, sitting in your living room, sitting on your couch, making this a very personal experience we're having, to where you want to be part of it with them. And that's what I was saying.
Yeah, perfectly said. Perfectly said. Well, no, Dusty is one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. I put him on my Mount Rushmore. It's so cool to see how many stars and stuff were influenced by him, from Scott Hall to you name it, Cody and Dustin, obviously, but like across the board, the impact that he's made on pro wrestling has been super, super cool to see. And
who else is on your Mount Rushmore?
Oh, okay. So I garnered from it from the aspect of, okay, it's spotlight time, and I think this will be a good one. Me and Greg talked a little bit yesterday, I think it was, about like, hey, who's some crossover talents that both you and Magnum have kind of ran into? And Greg has a huge list, and I'm sure you do too, Magnum. But I figure a good one to start with would be none other than Ric Flair, and that was per Greg's suggestion too. My goodness, such a transition from his AWA days to the Nature Boy to what a lot of fans associate him with. But Greg, I wanted to get your first impressions of Ric Flair, and Verne's first impressions of Ric Flair, because 1971, I think, is when you guys started training. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started training 72, right after the Olympics in 72. Patera finished in the Olympics. We came home, and it was Patera, Flair, Brunzell, the Iron Sheik, Bob Bruggers, and myself. And Rick was 294 pounds when he came to camp. Patera was 360. And, we did 6 hours, 6 days a week. But Verne always saw it, and you could see it in Flair. I mean, Verne used to say this was the best class that he ever, consisted with all 6 of us coming out of it and doing well. Bruggers got could have been, but most of us, Rick was Rick. I knew him in college. He wasn't any different today than he was back in college. I don't know if I told you the story about the girls for the sorority. Did I ever tell that story?
No.
Oh, really? So we're freshmen at the University of Minnesota, and the football coach is Murray Warmath, and Rick and I knew each other from high school. And Murray wanted me to stay in charge of Flair, keep tabs on him. Well, Flair's in one fraternity, and I'm in another one. And this fraternity in the fall, they have the sororities come over, and they all meet together, right? So here comes the girls, the freshmen, and some of the juniors and seniors are coming up, and they're coming up to the Delta house. And they hear this woo, and they look up, and here's Rick on the second floor of the fraternity house. One light bulb on above him, the window wide open, and he's standing up there naked.
That's a huge shock. I am appalled. I don't believe you would say that about the Nature Boy.
Right, never.
Really, yeah. There he was. Well, the freshman girls, a lot of them took off, but some of the other ones came in, and I know a few of those seniors took that Space Mountain ride that night. So from the days of then till now, he hasn't changed a whole lot. He was a personality, and Verne saw it in him right away. And Rick, he quit twice, and both times Verne went and knocked him on his ass and said, "Get back in that camp. You're not quitting." So he was a natural, and he's been just a great guy for professional wrestling. I mean, he's done a lot for professional wrestling and bringing notoriety to the sport.
Well, Magnum, before I get to you real quick too, you mentioned like Greg saw, that Verne saw the charisma and stuff already in Flair, like immediately like that. But like he has such a different look back then. And here I happened to find a picture of you and him together here. And a couple of questions.
Jeez,
why did you get rid of the mustache? And then
why? Just take a look at it.
I like it.
I look like I should have been one of those porn movies.
Right. I thought it was fitting for the times, though,
Yeah.
Wow.
Look at that.
My mouth's open. I've been shocked. You could have kept your gimmick and been like Magnum GG.
Right. Then you guys, form a tag team together.
Well, once you went Magnum TA, I got rid of the mustache.
Oh, there you go. Well, going in.
First match Rick and I had, we're in Peoria, Illinois. And it's in a high school gym. There's about 4,000 people in it. It's sold out. And we're going to do 20 minutes. And about 2 minutes into the match, Rick came off the ropes, a big body slam, and the ring broke.
Oh, yeah. You were telling us about that.
Right down. Did I tell you that one already?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I dove down and covered them. We're up sideways, and we went 20 minutes that night with a broken down one. And I guess that's when everybody knew that I guess the two of us had something that worked in wrestling.
Well, did Verne kind of have a plan for Rick when it comes to his charisma and how he was going to get him portrayed off of television? Like, was there, because you see the Nature Boy identity, and you mentioned that Flair was always like that. So was that going to be kind of the game plan for Verne in a lot of ways in showing off Flair? Yeah,
eventually he sent Rick out, to different areas, and then Rick got to Charlotte and he never came back.
Oh, okay.
He was supposed to go out and come back. But Rick was at the time when we started, we had Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch there, tag team. Joe Blanchard to send Dusty up. He said, "Hey, Verne, you got to take these guys. I've had a few issues down here, and they're really good." And Rick was a Dusty fan. He got the cowboy boots and the cowboy hat, and he was traveling with them everywhere. And we're going up to Minot, North Dakota. It's November, and it's cold. And Murdoch and Rhodes had a El Camino. The two in the front, then you had like a pickup truck almost.
Right in the back. Yeah.
So Patera had leased a car. Mr. Moneybags leased this car, the big Buick that we're going to ride with. And it's got Patera, Flair, Brunzell, the Iron Sheik, and myself in the car. And we're up about past St. Cloud, which is about an hour out of Minneapolis, hour and 15 minutes. And we got another 4 or 5 hours to go to get to Minot. It's 504 miles from Minneapolis. And it's cold. And we're in their back with the Iron Sheik, and he's all farting around. And we said, "God damn it!" We stopped to get gas, and Murdoch and Rhodes were ahead of us. And they said, "We'll put Cosro. He can come with us." So Cosro got a little jacket on, jumped in the. They said, "Well, there's no room in the front." They put him in the back end of the El Camino. And they're driving 80, 90 miles an hour, and it's colder than hell out. And Cosro would turn around and he'd hit the window, and they'd slam on the brakes. And he'd hit the window. They'd hit. They did this, and we're behind them. We're laughing our asses off. We get up there, and poor Cosro, he comes in the locker room, and he's shaking like this. He's all red. He's freezing. And then they get him in a battle royal, and they grab him, Murdoch and Rhodes. He never touched the top rope, landed in with the people, and that was it. But he wouldn't ride back with them.
He's like a block of ice at that point.
God, that Murdoch and Rhodes, oh, Jesus. We got a lot of stories about them when they came to Minneapolis.
I believe it.
Yeah, they were a pair.
Oh.
I'm sure you have some great Dusty stories, don't you, TA?
Well, I got plenty of Dusty, plenty of Rick, plenty of all of them.
Yeah.
And Rick was he was so influential in so many ways on me in the beginning, because I was the North American champion working for Bill Watts, and they brought Rick in and booked him with me, and I'm their number one guy. Him, boom, boom, and so I've never been in the ring with Rick in my life, and I think it was either Tulsa or Oklahoma City, and so we worked, had an amazing match. We worked some kind of DQ, like 45, 50-minute match, and unbeknownst to me, he was kind of like the scout for the Crockett's, and was like, letting them know, what I was all about, what was going on. And, fast forward 6 months, and I'm in there with Crockett, and when we went on the super station, Rick and I went all the way around the whole loop, all the big towns that we covered. And he and I went an hour every night for a month, 19-hour Broadways in 1 month.
How many?
19.
19.
And we did the whole loop to set the stage, because we were going in WWE's backyard. We were going in everybody's backyard. And they wanted that to be, setting the table for what the NWA, brought. Because at that time, Hogan was out there having the 8 10-minute matches, and just all the working the crowd, doing the stuff, and we were hammering the fact that we were the real deal, and just marketably different product. But being able to put that much ring time in with him, and understanding that the timing of what it takes to be able to do an hour with anybody like he had to be able to do as champion was why that role was so crucial. Because back then the champion was a traveling champion, and he had to go to New Zealand and Australia and Japan and every NWA territory there was, and work with whoever their top guy was. And of course, he's the world champion. He's not going in there and can't do the job. He's not dropping the belt. And so I can't imagine how many hours that man's done in his career. But when he says he could wrestle with a broomstick, I mean, he literally could. He could take guys that were good and have 5-star matches. He could take guys that were C class and still tear the house down and still get that out of them. And I learned more in the ring with him, just in timing and pacing yourself and doing the kinds of things you have to do that than pretty much anybody that I work with. And he was just a huge influence on me all the way around. And the neat thing was I had watched him growing up in the Mid-Atlantic area. I'd watched him on TV, and then I graduate from high school in 1977, and in 1985 we're selling out the Norfolk Coliseum where I grew up, capacity crowd for the world's title with my family and 2 sets of granddaddies up in the stand. And that's unheard of. That's like something out of a movie. The things like that don't really happen in real life, but I got to have that moment with him. So yeah, he's a special guy.
Yeah, he really is.
Magnum, is there a certain talent you mentioned like that? Flair works with anybody, and he has the track record to show it too. Is there somebody? There's a moment or an opponent that he had that you're like, wow, he really brought out the best in that person that I did not expect, and put them on another level. Basically, is there somebody that stands out to you?
During my time, he was only working with the Steamboats and the Ricky Mortons and guys that could all go, could all work. The unique thing with him was it didn't matter if he was out there with Dusty, who was charismatic as all could be, but obviously his in-ring work was limited to all the things that he could do. But he could go out there and have that hour match with Dusty that would create a riot just as well as he could going out there with Ricky Steamboat, who could do every classic move ever imagined, and with such grace and style, he looked like he should have been a ballet. But he had those abilities to go get a Kerry Von Erich, who was the most classic looking physique probably ever to be in a wrestling ring, and very charismatic, but very inconsistent in what which Kerry was going to come to play that day.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he could be super over the top, or or maybe not so. And so that's just some examples. I didn't ever obviously he wouldn't be booked with anybody that was just an undercard guy,
right.
And whatnot. But I'm sure he talks about we're doing an hour with Brody, and doing an hour with Brody, and Brody does what Brody wants to do. If Brody wants to take a walk and walk you all over the building and smack you into half the people out there, that's where you're going. And so he could, he was a very durable guy. I think most people, again, he wasn't that big after the plane crash. He trimmed down, maybe 230, from being, a 300 pounder, and really recreated himself and became, this, almost svelte athlete by comparison to, what he started out as. He looked more like Dick the Bruiser, back in the day. And he trimmed down to, the 60-minute man that, like the Ever Ready Bunny could just go and go and go in. And he really was. He could do that in the ring. He could stay up all night. I don't know when he slept. I mean, I've heard Terry Taylor talk about Terry was so excited because he's working with Ric Flair in the Superdome. And, oh, my gosh, it's like the biggest opportunity of his career. And Flair comes in, he looks like hell, and he's been out all night. You could tell. And when he went in the ring, he was all changed. His whole persona had changed. He was in his groove, and he ran him in the ground. He just, just like he's an H. Nobody could do it like him. And they kind of broke the mold there. It was a different time when we were a bunch of wild stinking Indians, and it was like the Wild Wild West. And if you couldn't go like that, you didn't get the opportunities. Mm-hmm. Because if you couldn't roll with the big boys to, like he's talking about, Dusty and Murdoch coming in town, and Harley Race when he was roaring, and Wild Eyed Mexican Silver, and the list goes on and on. There wasn't a lot of choir boys in any of that list of folks that we're talking about, from Terry Funk, right on through. But bunch of folks that could have been on the most wanted list if they'd been in a different occupation. So it wasn't for the faint of heart. And I will say, I don't know that the current crowd is durable enough to have done what we did, basically 330 plus days a year, and live that kind of fast paced, lifestyle on top of it, because you didn't necessarily know where every gym was in every town, but you knew where every bar was in every town. And it wasn't it wasn't anywhere near the environment of, going to buildings and having food catered for everybody and everybody having their health shakes and all that stuff. It was just a different time. And I don't know that it would play well to the culture of the folks today. There'd be a lot of hurt feelings and politically incorrect statements made and all kind of stuff that, it'd be funny though. I'd love to see it. I'd love to be able to take that class of 1980 to 1990, about 50 of those guys, and get about 50 of the guys from a day and put them all in a room and let them talk for a while and come back and see, well, it all worked out.
Right? Yeah. Like, how is that song going to play out? Right?
Yeah.
Well, here's in 1972 when Dusty and Murdoch came in. We had Verne had a bunch of young guys at that time: Don Morocco, Snuka. Then we had the Crusher. Then we had Bockwinkel, Stevens, Heenan, Billy Robinson, the Vachons. And if you don't think that was wild with that crew, every day after every town, Verne would get a call from the promoter. Either it was Snuka, or it was Morocco, or it was Dusty and Murdoch. And then he had the young guys and Flair. He jumped right in there with all of them.
Fit right in.
Of course, we all did. We didn't miss too many, but it was quite a interesting crew at that time.
Well, Greg, let me ask you this too. When you see Flair work over his career and move on from AWA and get to the Crockett's and then eventually move on WE, WCW, you have it. What did you see that he really took away from Verne's training that he adapted throughout his whole career? Is there something that stood out to you?
Oh, everything. I mean, we were all trained the same way, and Rick, I told you, came in at 294. He went out at 260 by the time Verne got done with him. But it was 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And we all learned the holds, the counter holds. We learned submission holds, learned, they had one drill they did. And God, we do this in the winter in December, and it would just kill us. We were in sweatsuits, and it'd be the end of the last hour. He'd put one guy in the ring and the other 5 standing on the apron. And then one guy would get in, and it might be Rick in the middle. And Verne would say, take the headlock, 2 tackles, leapfrog, arm drag, and he'd call it out. And each guy would go 3 minutes. So the guy in the middle would get, the other 5 guys. So you'd sweating your butt off, and then you'd stand at the end of the line, and it's 20 below zero, and your sweatsuit kind of freezes to you. And then you'd go back in the ring, and Verne would call a body slam the first move, and you'd come out. You felt like a cartoon character, you thought you shattered. So, and we did that every single day, and would build up to where you had each guy in there for 5 minutes with them. So we learned how to, we didn't learn how to pace there because it was nonstop for the guy in the middle. But we learned, it gave us the condition to go as long as we wanted to go in the ring. Wow. And Rick picked up on that, and I think we all did. And he excelled. He excelled. He's brought an awareness to professional wrestling in this era, and for how many years? Burns just sent him to Charlotte to get. He was supposed to get, more training there, learn the mat. Then he was bringing them back, and that's what he did with everybody. And same thing with Steamboat, and then they never came back.
Yeah.
So, fed the Crockett some pretty good talent there.
I would say so. I would definitely say so.
We wish TA would have been in our class.
Right.
Of course, he'd have been a few years after us. He's a young guy yet.
Imagine if there was like a trade or transfer portal back then for wrestling, where it'd be like, "Hey, we'll give you a Steamboat if you give us a Magnum for a couple."
Yeah,
that'd be pretty nice.
They didn't want to let go of anybody.
Yeah, you can't play it. Yeah, that's
Verne he wanted everybody to get at least a year experience with another organization, whether it was Kansas City or with Joe Blanchard or Crockett's or down to Eddie Graham. So he'd send the guys out to him, and most of them came back, but a few of them didn't.
Yeah.
They did really well for themselves. I mean, they were all talented guys, but it goes back to how they were trained and prepared to go into the ring and do an hour.
And I wasn't there, but I can tell you, for me, all that training and all the things he's talking about, it wasn't the moves, it wasn't the things, it's the mental toughness. Yeah. It's truly the mental conditioning to be able to put your body through things that would make most people quit, and getting conditioned in your brain that you can do anything, that there's nothing that's impossible, because it was like, if Dusty told me to go do something, I never thought about it. I hadn't practiced it. I hadn't done anything. He just said, "Hey, this sounds like a good idea. Go do that." And I would go do it just because he thought I could do it, and I thought I could do anything. And that's the mentality we had to have.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the Superdome and with that daggone Crockett Cup, and he says, "Hey, catch Tiger Mask, and belly to belly him, and he's going to come off the top." I've never talked to him, never seen him, don't know how much he weighs, nothing. And okay, sure, and of course he's the same mentality. He's the one giving me his body jumping off the top, is praying that I'm going to catch him and spin him around and do it. But all those things in those hours and that ring time made you mentally tough, and just made you believe that you could do whatever it took to get the job done. And that's why all those folks that persevered, what they went through with Verne, so many of them went on to be successful.
Well, part of that mental toughness too, and you hear about it, and you guys are well aware of it too, is you're working in the ring, you're working on the road, but you're also part of the name of the game is drinking and socializing, and that was part of a huge, from what I hear. I can't explain it.
I never got into that.
But, Flair's notorious for that stuff. So I guess a good way to close this episode out might be, you already shared a story, Greg, but if you have another one, what is something pretty entertaining that you can share with the listeners today that we can get away with, so to speak, on here?
Oh, man.
Magnum, you want to start? Do you have something?
Go ahead, Magnum. And I got another Dusty Murdoch one for you, but go ahead.
Well, this involves Dusty. So Great American Bash on tour, and we're in Richmond, Virginia, and big show, excitement. Everybody's all had a great time, great matches, and there's a brand new Sheraton just been built, beautiful bar. We're all in there. There was like 30 of us on the card, so we got 30 of the boys in there, in entourage and people and everything to go with it. And right there, somehow Flair decided to start a food fight. And I saw him put something on his fork, and I saw him turning it back, kind of like looking for his target. And of all the people in the world that you could hit with whatever it was he threw, it was Hawk. He hit home. Poof. Well, a food fight short of Animal House is the only thing I can think of that makes sense. The bus boys were running to the kitchen and bringing things to us to throw, because we were out of everything. I mean, bottles of ketchup and bottles of champagne pitchers with water in it. And anyway, this crazy thing. And this, again, beautiful hotel. And right in the front of the lobby, there was a little swimming pool right there in the lobby as you came in, with the desk on his side. And Dusty decides that he's going to do his Shamu imitation and takes all his clothes off and dives into the water, push, to finish off the evening, because he couldn't top the food fight anymore, and he didn't want to be end on that note. So he decided he'd give him one more show. And the manager sitting there looking at me, And I'm looking at him and I'm looking at Dusty. He said, "Are you going to get him out of there?" And I took my boots off and I walked out of the water. I said, "Big fellow, I think it's time to go to the room." And I got to sashayed him up out of there. We got some clothes around him and got him out. But, everybody was always taking it to the next level. And it seems like when you had guys like Rick and Dusty and the Murdochs and Wahoos and all these guys, they just always knew how to one up it one more time. And, again, if we could have only captured it on camera,
right? We wouldn't be doing the podcast.
No, that's fabulous stuff.
Greg, how about you? What do you got? What was the story?
Well, Go Laura just walked in here with groceries. Come here, Laura. Show them your face. Anyhow, so Dusty and Murdoch are here, and every week Verne's got something going on. Jesus, they're in so much trouble. So they had a, God, how did it go again? It'll come back to me at some point. Go Laura came in here and got me all fired up. So Murdoch and Rhodes are down at this they got him a apartment called Cedars of Edina. Mm-hmm. Edina is kind of a upper end class of people there, and brand new apartment complex. And the Minneapolis police always monitored our wrestling. They always down at the wrestling matches. So Dusty and Decker, they got a place at the Edina Cedars apartments. And Wally Carbo gets a call about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. "Hey, Wally, this is the Edina and Minneapolis Police Department. We're down here at Edina Cedars, and we got Murdoch and Rhodes here." And Wally, he was, "Well, there, what happened there, pal?" He said, "Well, we got a call that there's all this noise." So we pulled up and we came in and we got through the door and we opened it, and there was two naked women, and Dusty and Murdoch naked, and they were playing football with the girls, and they had an Appaloosa donkey in the apartment. The donkey had relieved itself all over the walls. True story. So he says, "We should throw him in jail." He says, "Oh, guys, you can't throw him in jail. You can't throw him in jail." "Okay, Wally, we'll get him out of here." So they got him out. About 12:30, 12:45, Wally gets another call. "Hey, Wally, it's the Minneapolis police again. We got Murdoch and Rhodes here." "Oh, pal, what happened there?" "Well, they went down to this country western bar, and Dusty got up singing his favorite song, and they're drunker than hell, and they got the girls with them, and Murdoch rides the Appaloosa donkey into the bar and up on the stage, and Dusty's singing, and the donkey relieves himself on the stage again." So Wally says, "Oh, God, guys, what are you going to do?" "Well, we should throw him in jail. What are we going to do with this damn donkey?" "Tell them to put it on their trailer and tell them to go check into some hotel somewhere, but leave the donkey in the trailer." So,
where do they get a donkey? Where do they get a donkey?
Who knows where they got it? An Appaloosa donkey they came in with. When he rode in, he had the guns and he was shooting that. He shot the holes in the ceiling in the bar.
Oh my God.
So there was plaster flying all over. So they took the guns away from him and let him go. So then Verne had to have him in the office. And of course, Verne wanted to be mad at him, but the story was
that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Wasn't it? Well, that's why Verne sent him to Charlotte. He had to get him out of there for a while.
You know what? You guys got to leave there. It's like the mafia. You guys got to get out of here for a while.
We got to get him out. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, classic stuff.
That's the way to end the episode.
Now, who else would come up with a prank like that, right?
Right.
Where would you even think of doing something like that? Only these two.
Playing football naked, and then
they were drunk. They had been drinking all night. They had the Southern Comfort out. They had the beer out.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Johnny be
Nice.
bad. That's what Dusty was singing. Go,
My
go,
goodness.
go, Johnny, go. And here comes Murdoch. Bang, 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 bang.
Shoot the ceiling and then bring it
yeah.
to Rocky. What the
Classic, huh?
heck? Guys, if you don't like that, I don't know what to tell you on this one.
No, that's it.
Holy smokes.
You never heard that one, TA?
You get the prize. That was good. That was really good.
Have you ever heard that, TA?
I seem to recall it. I remember hearing a story about a donkey, Dusty telling me. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God. It was unbelievable.
Well, I mean, we'll be focusing on Dusty for an episode for sure. And then, I mean, Flair will always be in the conversation, too. So I'm sure we'll follow back.
He ran hard with those, too.
I bet. I believe it. I believe it. So, guys.
He was a Dusty fan. He had the cowboy boots and the hat.
Yeah. Well,
he wanted to be Dusty.
Didn't he want to be Ricky Rhodes? Is that true, right? Is that what his first name wanted to be?
Well, he wanted to be just like Dusty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Verne said, no, you can't go by Ricky Rhodes. No.
You can't do that.
No. But he had the cowboy hat and the boots, and he ran with them wherever they were. He was there.
I believe
following them around.
Oh, how about that? Jeez. Yeah. So crazy. Wrestling's such a fascinating genre. The people, the outlaws that go into it. That's why I love it. That's why I love it.
Yeah, there's stories like that about all this great talent that Magnum, TA, and I were around.
Hey, we'll be covering here
for the next show.
Yeah, we'll save them for the next show.